afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. With fall in the air, the gardening season is winding down. But if you have a garden, lawn, or landscape, there are still things to do or problems that you want to solve now or avoid next year. So back with us today are two experts from UVM Extension and the Plant and Soil Science Department, Leonard Perry and Ann Hazelrig. Thanks so much for coming up today.
Thanks.
Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is garlic, and this is the time of year to plant it. We're all thinking about ending our gardens, but this is the time to start your garlic.
Yeah, I mean, you can just do things so much of the season in the garden, and this is the time to plant garlic. It's a great crop, it's an easy crop, nutritious crop, and it's just so easy. And basically what you start with is a bulb, which is made up of the cloves. This is actually the part you eat, but you don't want to use supermarket garlic. That's either been treated so it doesn't sprout, or it's the wrong varieties for the climate garlic.
Oh, okay.
There's certain varieties that grow better in certain climates. This is one called Music. We've over the years tried, my wife and I, maybe 15, 20 different varieties, and Music seems to be one of the better ones. So you start with this. It has
and so do you buy these at a garden store? Or?
You can buy these, yeah, at a garden store,
okay,
or through catalogs, online, whatever. And it has these papery sheets you take off here to reveal these individual little bulblets, actually, or cloves as they're called with garlic. These are pretty fat ones, and you can get 4 or 5 per garlic bulb here, and you can see the raised parts. There's 1, 2, looks like a small one, which I'd save to eat, 3, 4, 4 on this one. So what you do is you take these outer layers off, separate these cloves, and then these are what you plant.
Oh, okay.
And just instead of grating them and cooking with them, you plant them in the ground, putting the top part up and the little part here down. And you want to space maybe 3 inches. For the bigger ones like this, I'd put them about 4 inches apart, so maybe 3 per foot. And you put them about a couple inches deep, not too deep, but a couple inches underground. And just then what you do is, and first of all, of course, you want to have good soil, like anything in gardening.
Right.
It kind of goes, should mention that just to make sure, but good compost. We usually work in a little bit of compost in the soil. Plant them. You don't really fertilize them now. Only thing you should do is get some nice weed-free straw, not hay, which often has weed seeds, and put some on the top, maybe about, we'd fluff up, sprinkle it about 6 inches, and that helps keep the soil heat in, so they'll get established, and it helps protect them over the winter, because we have them in some low raised beds, and the last 2 very severe winters, they have come through fine, so they're really tough. Then as soon as you can in the spring, get that hay or straw off so the warmth will get in there. And it's amazing, even with the soil frozen in the spring, I notice them starting to grow. I don't know how they do it, so you want to get that straw off. That's when you sprinkle a little light fertilizer, maybe some organic fertilizer on top or along the rows. We plant these in rows so they're easier to maintain. And that's basically what you do for garlic.
Interesting. Now, Ann, as head of UVM's Plant Diagnostic Lab, you're looking at pests and diseases, the not so pretty side of gardening, I guess. What are some of the problems that you see?
Yeah, it depends on your perspective. I think this is the pretty side of gardening. But people are harvesting potatoes now, and so there's a common potato disease that some gardeners are seeing, and it's called potato scab. It looks awful. It's caused by a bacteria. It causes these sort of erumpent lesions on the potato. But this is very superficial. It's fine to eat. You can just peel that off and they make perfect mashed potatoes. But if you want to avoid that next year, gardeners should maybe look at a different cultivar, a resistant cultivar to scab. They can, when their potatoes are starting to tuberize or form potatoes just after flowering, they want to keep the soil moisture wet. Also, they can maintain a lower soil pH, and that will help decrease the amount of that disease.
But once again, you can eat this potato.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. It's just a marketing issue. And this disease also gets, I've got another picture, it also gets on beets. So causes those same warty lesions, but again, it's perfectly fine to eat. But just something to think about before you purchase potatoes for next year and plant them. Look for a resistant variety.
Excellent. Okay. Well, let's come back to Leonard. You brought in some roots of a peony. Oh my goodness!
I did.
Look
Again,
at the size of those.
this is a big. Peonies tend to get big. This is 2 or 3 years old. It's, you know, if you order a peony, this is probably, you get something like this with the big fat roots. These are the storage organs that have the food for next year, so it gets going. And some of these other feeder roots. This I dug up. Really, you don't need to dig up peonies unless stressed, they're not blooming well, if they need to be moved, if they're just just too large for the site. We actually have a few in the site that need to be moved, where there's going to be some construction. So now is the time to dig those up. You want to get a fork, garden fork, to not a spade or shovel that can cut through these by mistake. Loosen that soil and kind of gently pull these out. And what you want to plant is ones, and you see up top here, these little buds, those are the eyes of the peony, and those are the real important parts. These are the growing points for next year. You want one with about 3 to 5. This I think has 1, 2, 3, 4 I see here eyes, which is great to plant. And one of the key things with peonies, you don't want these too deep, no more than an inch or 2 under the soil surface.
Oh, no kidding.
And that includes mulch. So I know in the past I've had people help mulch beds, and if the mulch gets too high, they'll grow, but they just won't bloom. That's one of the reasons peonies don't bloom, is they're too deep. So just make sure these are just below the surface, these little buds. Again, like with a lot of things, these hopefully are going to be in for many years. Peonies can be in the same place for 20, 30 years or more. So you prepare the soil well, add some organic matter, either peat moss, which doesn't break down as readily as compost, or compost, which actually enriches the soil. I like to add a little bit of both. Just dig that in, make a nice big hole that you can then put this in. Don't have to squinch the roots around and cover it back, but again, not too deep. Give it a little bit of water, and then it'll take off.
Now, you mentioned these are the key things not to cut into.
Yeah,
now, how do you know where they are, how to find them?
Well, you just, again, with the fork, you just dig under the, I just go out about 6 inches or so and kind of loosen it up, and the fork hopefully won't dig into these. It's between the tines on that, it'll kind of loosen the soil if you go out far enough, and then you can kind of put your hands under and kind of feel where these are and just loosen it and pull it out. So again, if you need to divide peonies or get roots, that's what to do. But again, if they're blooming fine, you may not need to do anything with them.
Don't touch them.
Yeah.
Now, apples and pumpkins are obviously a big fall crop. And are you getting any questions about these particular things?
Yeah, lots. We've had a great apple crop this year, and there's a disease that is on apples, on some apples, called apple scab. And this is common on unsprayed apples. So if you're
the wild,
the wild
trees.
Right, exactly. So if you have this on your trees, it's a fungus disease. This is the disease that commercial growers have to spray for 15 times in a season.
Right.
So if you have this and you want to control it over the winter, figure out how you need to do those sprays. You have to put on those fungicide sprays and come up with a game plan, because that disease will show up to some extent every year. And if you do have that disease and you don't want to spray, it's also on the foliage. Home gardeners can rake up those leaves and destroy them, use good sanitation, and that will decrease the overwintering spores. The other problem we have this time of year, or potential problem, is on pumpkins. Growers should remember that if you leave your pumpkins out now and they're orange, they're subject to lots of different diseases and also chilling injury. Pumpkins are damaged under 50-degree temperatures. So if you've got orange pumpkins, bring them in and protect them to have them last as long as possible. But this is a fungus-like disease on pumpkins that when you have 24 hours of soil-saturated water, this disease can really take off, and it'll just sort of melt your pumpkins away. So that's another reason to, if they're orange, harvest them, get them off the soil, get them out of the garden, and they'll last longer. Is
it okay to leave them outside if at night it gets cold and you can cover them?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, you can cover them too.
Now, when you talk about looks like mold or fungus, I noticed some on my phlox.
Yeah.
And so is that something that it looks like one of my plants actually has died? Is it dead? Will it come back?
Well, it probably will. Phlox gets powdery mildew. So with any of these garden diseases, always clean up all the tissue, all the plants.
Cut it back.
Cut it back, get it out of the area, and watch it next year. But all these diseases will overwinter on that leaf tissue.
Oh, okay.
So you want to get rid of it so it doesn't start out with the disease right there next year.
Excellent. Now, we talked earlier about planting garlic, and Leonard, what about planting flower bulbs this time of year?
Okay, yeah, this is the time to plant those too. And just wanted to follow up quickly on Ann too, a couple things. I know assume you don't put the leaves in the compost unless you have a really hot pile or good compost. But up here it's so hard. I know I don't have, I call mine a passive pile, you know.
I call mine a brush pile.
I just put mine in and
So not only clean up the debris, but take it away.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Might not be a bad idea just to bag it up in a garbage bag and toss it.
You could, or bury it, whatever's easiest.
Another thing is, I think, just cleaning up. I know I was looking at all the vegetable garden and everything's been frosted, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll just leave till spring. Say, no, I got to clean it up now. Any inoculum diseases, get it out of there, and
Should you
then
cut
it'll be
back
ready for
perennials
spring.
too this time of year?
Well, it depends. I think, that's a good point, because I think if they're diseased, daylilies looking really bad, if they're not looking very good, yeah, definitely cut them back. Again, if they're diseased, like the phlox, if they have mildew on it, take that out. But if they have nice stems that are going to stay up a while, ornamental grasses, seed heads that the birds can enjoy, yeah, definitely leave those for a bit, and you can leave those till spring, then cut them back.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, so you're safe with that.
So, bulbs.
Bulbs. Brought several here. This is a hyacinth like you might buy in the store. And I wanted to talk first about the forcing, because what I usually do is get enough for that. You can buy bulbs just for forcing. And what that means is putting them in pots and having them to bloom indoors. Basically what they need is you pot them in the fall, give them about 12 weeks of cool. And by cool, it's around 40 degrees. Old refrigerator, unheated cellar, just so they don't freeze. And so basically for a small 4-inch pot like this, maybe a bulb, that's often what you find, and if you see them at the stores, that's what growers have done. Put a hyacinth bulb. With most of these bulbs, you want the top roughly even, or maybe just a little higher than the rim of the pot. So you can see here, and then what I'll do is just fill in with soil up to that rim of the pot. It'll settle down a bit, but then it'll get rooted in there. This is something you definitely want to do now. So now sometimes people say, well, I didn't get my bulbs planted, can I wait till spring? No, they'll start growing. Make sure they get either in the ground or in pots now. This is a daffodil, so the one I'm going to try. It's real pretty one here. And you see in this pot, it's a 6 inches pod called azalea. It's a little shorter one, but you could use a deeper one. I put 3 of these, and sometimes you get really big daffodils. You might only want to put 2 if they're really big, and these are what are called double nose. They have 2 tops here, so they'll have 2 stems on it, hopefully 2 blooms. Again, about the same height, so a little bigger than the rim. You just fill in the soil up to that as well.
And do you water those in?
Oh yeah, and then you water them in, just so they get watered in.
Okay.
Well, you might have the soil a little bit moist before you begin, but definitely water them in. But don't keep them too wet. That's a good point, because you don't want to just keep them drenched. When they're cool, check them periodically. If they're really drying out wherever they are, you might want to give them a little water, but it should be pretty sufficient. Now this is what's called a bulb pan. It's a little bit wider, and I'm trying something different in that. I've got some crocus, which are these small little ones. Of course, when you're planting these out, only plant those an inch or 2 deep. Of course, like most bulbs, you want the little pointed part up and the little flat part down. But I'm interplanting these 4 crocus and 5 tulip bulbs in here. So hopefully this is a red and purple, and it'll match the purple on that, a red with purple stripes. So that should be really nice. But again, not only the tops near the rim, but another trick with the tulips. If you notice, tulips have a flat side to them. That's where the first leaf will come out. And so the trick is, like growers do, is put it so that flat side's near the edge of the pot, so that leaf will spill over the pot and they won't all grow into the center. So
good tip.
Nice spacing here, proper height, fill in with soil, water them, and then about 12 weeks, about 3 months of 40 degrees, then you can start pulling them out and have those blooms in the springtime indoors. And what I do is actually pot some up like this, bury them in the ground outside under some like sawdust or wood chips, so I can get at them easy in the spring. When they start growing, I pull them out. Then I put them in raised beds or containers or patio planters, which they of course wouldn't overwinter being above ground like that, but in the ground they get that warmth. And so that's a way you can have some bulbs earlier in wherever you want in the garden.
Now if people have questions, there's a website website?
There is, so you can go to my website, perrysperennials.com, Perry's Perennial pages, or perrysperennials.info. Any of those work. And I have more on a lot of articles on all these topics that we've been talking about today, the garlic and types and bulbs and forcing and so forth.
And I know there's also the Master Gardener Helpline as well.
Right. If you see problems in the garden, want to know what it is, they're the first line of defense. Contact the Master Gardeners and the toll-free numbers on the screen.
And you can actually talk to a person.
Yeah, exactly. A gardener.
Yeah, great. Well, I want to thank you both for coming in today. It's always interesting and always learning something new, and I guess I better get back in the garden before the snow flies.
Take advantage of it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.